Most modern wall calendars present the Khmer New Year as an event permanently locked into a 3-day block in mid-April. We typically treat this date as a fixed anniversary, tethered neatly to the 365-day Gregorian grid. This assumption breaks in the year 2043. The New Year marker physically slides off the familiar mid-April block, landing squarely on April 17th. This drift exposes a structural collision. The Khmer calculation of time operates through a logic ignoring fixed-length European months. Songkran marks a highly specific astronomical threshold, the sun's physical transit from one constellation into the next. The Western solar model relies on a fixed count of roughly 365.25 days. The Khmer Soya-Ketek model replaces day counts with dynamic vectors that track the actual shifting position of celestial bodies in space. This dual-track framework allows Cambodia to measure time through a system that remains completely isolated from Western monthly structures. To interpret the depths of Cambodian history accurately, the Gregorian calendar overlay must be fully removed from the timeline. Much of our current cultural confusion stems from forcing these two mathematically incompatible systems into a single alignment. When we insist the new year must fall on April 13th, regardless of celestial position, we generate a 4-day calculation error. Forcing this Western grid onto Khmer history doesn't just change the date, it overwrites the astronomical math that defined the state for centuries. The bedrock of Khmer timekeeping is the Chantraya Ketek. This circular timeline models a purely lunar calendar, built to govern Buddhist monastic cycles and religious pacing. Tracking the moon requires high mathematical flexibility. A single cycle can contain 354, 355, or 384 days. To keep lunar cycles tethered to the physical seasons, astronomers perform large-scale interventions. They slot in entire leap months to prevent the religious calendar from detaching from the solar year. Absolute precision requires a final micro-calibration. A single leap day is injected into specific years to catch the exact fractions of the lunar orbit. This volatile calibration determines the exact timing of critical religious observances, most notably the Buddhist rain retreat. Prior to the Gregorian era, the state used this same fluctuating lunar model to determine the secular New Year. While the Chantraya Ketek paced religious life effectively, its fluctuating length made it unstable for long-term state administration or precise agricultural planning. Cambodian horology reached a definitive pivot point in the Buddhist era year 1850, which correlates to roughly 1306 CE. During the late Gregorian period, the empire required an administrative clock that matched the geometric precision of its temple complexes. The ruling class formally decoupled the secular New Year from the unpredictable lunar calendar used by the monks. Buddhist monastic practices remained strictly anchored to that older lunar track, maintaining their traditional cycles. The secular New Year diverged into a newly engineered mathematical solar system. This provided the absolute administrative stability needed to govern a sprawling empire. This divergence in 1306 created a dual-track framework. Khmer astronomers were now required to simultaneously manage two completely separate mathematical models of time. This secular solar system is the Soya-Ketek. It tracks exact celestial positioning rather than a simple 365-day count. Traditional Khmer astrologers compute the sun's position using a mathematical formula called the Atapuj. The first variable in this equation is the Ahak run. This is a raw count of every elapsed day from a fixed, distant historical baseline. Counting unbroken days provides a more stable foundation for astronomy than the arbitrary, human-defined months of a standard calendar. The second variable, the chromophule, accounts for the sun's non-uniform motion through space. The chromophule measures solar anomaly. It proves that Khmer mathematicians understood elliptical orbits, accounting for the way celestial bodies accelerate and decelerate along their paths. When the Ahakran day count merges with the chromophule anomaly, the formula locks on to the exact hour and minute the sun transits into Aries. The new year begins only when the math reaches this threshold. The calculation is indifferent to whether the resulting date lands on the 13th or the 17th of a Western month. Sangkran functions purely as a calculated mathematical threshold of precise celestial mechanics, completely independent of any printed calendar grid. This computational literacy was disrupted in the mid-20th century, specifically during the French Protectorate era around 1948. The Protectorate enforced a sweeping administrative adoption of the Gregorian calendar across all levels of Cambodian society. The rigid 365-day grid began to overwrite the fluid Soryakotek system in daily civic life. Mathematical formulas preserved for centuries on palm leaves were sidelined. They were replaced by the convenience of imported pre-printed dates. This administrative transition broke the chain of indigenous literacy. As the Western grid took over, the specific mathematical knowledge required to calculate historical epochs began to fade from public memory. Adopting the Western calendar did more than change the date of a festival. It removed the population's ability to read their own historical horology. Fluid Khmer astronomical calculations and rigid Gregorian blocks remain incompatible. A dynamic orbital vector cannot be accurately represented by a static box. Retroactively mapping historical Khmer dates onto European timelines produces compounding mathematical errors that distort the past. Accurate interpretation of Cambodian history requires scholars to understand both the lunar and solar tracks simultaneously. These two tracks run in parallel harmony, designed to operate without ever intersecting. This dual-track system functions as a high-precision computational engine, a testament to a profound pre-modern mastery of the cosmos.